Welcome back to the PS Pub, and barring delayed introductions, today's game is Mega Man Powered Up. Really, what can I say about the Blue Bomber that hasn't already been said? He is a classic video game character for a reason, who's timeless and iconic in his own right. I always found myself to be more of a Mega Man X guy personally, and yes, we will cover Maverick Hunter X in the future, but there is much love and appreciation between myself for the original Blue Bomber, except for his very first entry. To this day of the original NES saga, I still hold the original game as my least favorite on the console. In fact, it's the only Mega Man game of the original timeline I think borders on bad personally. I had never sat down to play this game when I was a lot younger, but when I was much older, I finally got around to playing through Rock's first outing, and I just didn't enjoy it. I'm not sure if it was just because I had played every other original Mega Man game at that point or what, but I couldn't enjoy this original game the same way a lot of my other friends had. I'll say this, it definitely set the foundation for the other games in the series and absolutely deserves its place as an innovator, but for me, it's hard to justify playing this game as I feel every other Mega Man game is better. And as a side note, I had Mega Man on Game Boy and enjoyed that a lot more than the NES original. However, flash forward a few years to this PSP exclusive, Mega Man Powered Up, a remake and reimagining of Rock's very first adventure. So how does it stack up today, and has it aged at a more graceful pace than the original game it's based off of?
I must make the necessary preparations. Roll, could you please assist me?
Mega Man Powered Up was released on March 2nd, 2006 in Japan and March 14, 2006 in the US, which was a little less than 3 months after Maverick Hunter X was released. Unfortunately, both games sold poorly in Japan, but they did do a bit better in the US, with the PSP's early life cycle being to blame here and that it didn't get ported to the DS from sources that I read online. I personally don't necessarily buy the former statement, however. Sure, porting anything to multiple consoles or handhelds would likely increase sales, but the PSP had already been out for over a year at the time Powered Up had launched. I read online that fans of the Mega Man brand hadn't moved over to the PSP, but I don't know, to me that just sounds like personal opinion, which doesn't exactly make sense since Maverick Hunter X was already on the handheld. If I was speculating as well and giving my own opinion, Capcom's been really weird with the Mega Man IP as a whole for the last 20-ish years. Sure, we've got some interesting and good games, but it almost feels like that they just don't want to do a whole lot with any iteration of the Blue Bomber aside from like Mega Man collections. I guess it could theoretically have started with these two remakes not selling well, but then again, they never tried porting these to the PS2 or anything like that. It could have been a marketing issue as well, because it seems like a lot of the pre-release buzz led people to believe this was just a straight up port of the original NES game with a new art style. I could believe that, I suppose, but now I'm just speculating without actually knowing anything. Still, it's a shame as both games had sequels intended to be made, but were unfortunately shelved due to the low sales, and man, just the thought of PS2 versions of this and Maverick Hunter X and their sequels truly makes my heart hurt just a little bit. Now, according to Keiji Inafune, which unfortunately means we do kinda have to take this with a grain of salt, in an old GameSpy interview from September 17, 2005, stated that the art style for Powered Up was always the intended art style for the original Mega Man game. Quoting Inafune, "Believe it or not, what you're seeing on the PSP is what I originally intended Mega Man to look like. But as I was making the game for the NES, there were limitations on hardware and the graphics, so he ended up looking how he looked in those games. Now I have hardware that has far fewer limitations as far as the graphics. I can finally show the true Mega Man that I wanted to show." I have the rest of the article in the description below if you're interested in checking that out. Whether or not this is true, I will say from a personal opinion, and slight spoiler here, but I actually really liked the art style and presentation for Mega Man Powered Up. It fits the overall tone and design they were going for, and say what you will about how well Powered Up sold and Inafune nowadays as a developer, but there was a clear and concise vision that does follow through completely, whether you do or do not like the new graphical style and look. So slight spoilers going forward, and especially when we get into the gameplay modes and unlockables.
I've been looking all over for you, Mega. We've got a big problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. The name's Wily, the one and only, the brilliant scientist, Dr. Wily.
Mega Man Powered Up sees disgraced scientist Dr. Wily take control of 8 master robots who were normally used in everyday life to help society, and intends to use them in order to take over the world. Meanwhile, Rock, one of Dr. Light's most lifelike robots, sees his friends getting taken over by Dr. Wily and chooses to become a super fighting robot named Mega Man. In order to not only save his friends, but save the world as well. The game is a reinterpretation of the original Mega Man game that spawned the franchise, and for the most part, it does follow the same beats story-wise. You'll need to defeat each of the 8 master robots, culminating in an assault on Dr. Wily's castle, and finally a climactic showdown with the Mad Doctor himself. As you probably noticed, the biggest change story-wise here though is the inclusion of 2 new master robots, Time Man and Oil Man, as the original game only had 6 robot masters to fight, giving the original Mega Man game the 8 count that is prevalent in all the other games. I think these new bosses slot in perfectly with the old ones, and their levels also work very well here. Not much more to say from me here, as I think they are nice additions. I do think it's kind of funny because despite the game not being readily available on any other system or platform, Oil Man and Time Man are more or less always associated with Mega Man 1 now, and I do think that that's kind of cool. I just wish that Mega Man Powered Up was offered on either Steam or PlayStation or something to that matter.
Well done, but you say goodbye here. I might even tell you more about me after I win.
I don't have any reason to fight you, Man. Come on, let's go home.
You'll never blast through my heart with that kind of attitude. It's really too bad, but I'm going to finish you at lightning speed.
The graphics and colors are big, bright, and bombastic, and I know this will probably be contentious for some people with the art and graphical style and choice, but honestly, I loved it. I even loved it more upon replaying it now, and I think going with the pseudo chibi style works well, and not only its artistic style making it visually striking, but it makes it hold up to today as something special and unique looking. I know it's not going to be for everyone, as doing some research online, I saw that there were some reviewers and fans that were not super happy about the more cutesy approach to the style, but I found it delightful and visually popping. Each level is distinct and each character is memorable, from their design down to their personalities. I think personally the only character I think was done a little dirty was Gutsman. I feel like he should have been a little bit taller. I don't know why, just him being the same height as everyone else just, I don't know, it just really throws me off. I'm nitpicking of course, but from a gameplay standpoint, I understand why this concession needed to be made, and I'll touch on that in a bit. Overall, everything looks great here with its design and presentation being consistent all the way through the entire game and through all of its modes.
Stop and freeze!
The audio in Powered Up is clear and sounds great with or without headphones. The music is all remixed editions of the original game's OST, and I love it. The soundtrack here fits the new style and tone overall, and each of the new remixes sounds great, not only as standalone tracks, but as reinterpretations of the classic songs. All the voice acting does its job here, as most characters are portrayed as a little over the top and cartoony, but it fits the vibe overall, and I think they complement the game in general.
Don't run off. Let's have a little fun with my explosives.
Bomb Man, that's really dangerous. Stop setting off bombs.
You should have come the day before yesterday. I had some big boom booms then.
Hey, men only. Little boys don't belong here. Go home before you get hurt.
Time to punch out and go home, Gutsman.
You big idiot! What'll happen to me if I get fired? I'm gonna take you down with me.
Fire! Burn! Burn! My justice burns hotly. Evil beware.
Fireman, why are you... I haven't done anything to you.
By the fire of justice, I am certain you are evil! Fire!
It reminds me a lot of the 90s Mega Man cartoon, and the over-the-top voices I think complement the characters great given the tone and design of this game. It might not be for everyone, especially if you prefer a more serious approach to Mega Man, but I don't think they make a mockery of the series or anything like that. I think it's just a more cartoony approach to the source material, and it's pulled off extremely well. There are two modes here, New Style, which is a complete retelling of the original game with new mechanics, features, levels, playable characters, and cutscenes, while the Old School mode, which allows you to play through the classic version of the game just with the graphical updates. New Style mode features the same core story from the original game, but the experience, for the most part, is a brand new one. Bosses all have unique animations from taunting all the way to new moves and attacks with different AI, leading to each boss feeling fresh and different in comparison to the original game. Not to mention the levels here have been remixed from the original with new layouts, designs, and pacing overall. Truly, if you're going from the original game to this game's New Style mode, it will feel like playing two separate games. The story, while just being a retelling of the original game, is made better in my opinion with the cutscenes and introduction level, which helps to set up the story all the way to the end. Upon defeating the first of the 8 master robots, you'll unlock them and they will be playable going forward, even in story mode. You have access to them by pressing the right shoulder button on the level select screen. There we can see a small introduction about them and what their special abilities can do. Each character not only plays like their boss counterpart, but they also have extra abilities separate from Mega Man that they can use that are special to them. For example, Elecman can manipulate electric blocks, which allows you to explore previously inaccessible areas. In order to unlock master robots, you do need to beat them without utilizing their weakness. Using a robot master's weapon will destroy them, and you'll need to replay the level in order to get them. It doesn't matter what difficulty either, so if you want to get them all quickly, you can run through the initial stages on easy mode. Keep in mind, you can't use a special at all on the master robot. If they even take one hit from a special, then they will be destroyed at the end of the fight. Easy, normal, and hard modes are tied to each individual character as well, so although the story continues, you can always replay the levels with the additional characters on different difficulties in order to get the clear for that character on that stage, giving the player other reasons aside from collecting missed items to repeat previously completed stages. This makes it fun trying out all the different robots on each stage. Not to mention their unique abilities will often lead to you finding secrets, so there's always a reason to experiment with different characters on different stages. Keep in mind, in terms of progress, whenever you play as a new character, you will have to start from the beginning, as each of the unlockable characters' progress is tailored specifically to them and the difficulty you've chosen for them. You can even see the level progression count for each robot on the character select screen, so you will need to re-unlock Wily's castle stages individually per character. However, if you switch back to the previously played character, it does not erase the other character's progress, so you can switch back and forth as much as you'd like, and I actually think that's really nice. Not to mention, there are additional hidden characters to play as in the game as well. Mega Man S, Mega Man C, Mega, which is just regular rock, Proto Man, and Roll you can get as a pseudo DLC character, which I'll touch on in a bit later, as there is a specific way you need to go about getting Roll as a playable character nowadays. For those of you wanting a more straightforward remake experience, Old School Style also has you covered, as this is, for the most part, a one-to-one recreation of the original game, even down to the same music for level select and stages, only in the powered-up art style, and it doesn't include Time Man and Oil Man as bosses. I say for the most part because while the stages are identical, there is subtle changes with the enemy AI and effects in the game that don't make it completely one-to-one. For example, while the bosses may not have the extra animations for taking damage based off their weapon's weakness, certain things like Bomb Man's bombs still getting cut by Cut Man's weapons are here. There are probably better guides out there that can discuss a lot of the changes in the old school mode and can even comment better on a lot of the nuance here, but for me personally, I felt it was a fairly adequate recreation of the original game, all the way down to the frustrating platforms of Iceman's stage. Still, if you are more of a fan of the original release but want to play in the chibi art style, Powered Up allows you to play through it all the way to the end. You are able to save your game between stages, which is a plus, but you are not able to play as any additional characters in old school mode, which honestly I do think is a bit negative, since it would be cool to play the old school levels but with new characters. Old school style has only one difficulty to choose from, which makes the most sense to me, as it's supposed to be essentially a recreation of the original game just with the updated graphics. However, the point system from new style is also carried over here as well, so you will not get random point generations when selecting a boss, making it easier to achieve true high scores in classic style. I may not be the biggest fan of the first Mega Man game, but I did enjoy my playthrough of old school style a bit more, as I'm a fan of the art style in this game. Still, I can see some fans preferring the original over this, and I totally get it. It's fairly close to a one-to-one recreation, but again, there is enough changes to not render the original game obsolete or ruin your enjoyment of the original game. So in a way, you're getting two different games here. One is a completely remixed and new version of the classic game, but you're also getting a mostly faithful recreation of the original that I'd hearken to like a movie remake where they only make minor changes versus like a reboot or something along those lines. Plus, if we don't count construction mode, the single player content alone would be enough to make this a worthwhile purchase when it released and even still today.
There's something dangerous up ahead, sir. Oh, freeze it at all costs, soldier.
I don't believe it. Iceman. Even a loyal robot like you.
Well, sir, Soldier, finish your mission.
While playing through Powered Up, I noticed that there were a lot of cool little details in the game that I just wanted to take the time to mention before I get into some of my nitpicks with this particular game. So when in a boss fight with one of the robot masters, if you attack them near a wall, they'll smack into it and slowly fall downwards off the wall. I think it looks good and it adds to the cartoony vibe, but it also really adds a lot of the character's personality, especially afterwards when the robot master will do this animation and then shake off the attack. It's a lot of these nice little touches that really sticks out in the best possible way. I mentioned a bit earlier, but another cool little detail I noticed is in the fight with Bomb Man, if you use his weakness via Cutman's blades to attack one of his bombs, it'll chop the bombs in half, leading it to being useless. What I didn't mention though is that this also works when he uses his huge bomb special attack. If you throw Cutman's weapon and hit the giant bomb, it'll explode right away even if Bomb Man's still holding it. It doesn't hurt Bomb Man, but it can still hurt you if you're close to it, but it's still a nice detail nonetheless. However, out of all these, the first of these little details that I noticed though, and really what got me to start paying extra attention to all the little things with Powered Up, was when pushing up against a wall, Brock will put his hand up as if he's using the wall for cover or just maintaining his balance against that particular wall. It doesn't do anything or change the gameplay at all, but I appreciated that the devs went out of their way to just add in all these subtle little details just because, hey, this might look cool. It doesn't add extra frames of animation, it's subtle, and it just gives that little bit of love and attention that just honestly just kind of works with this whole package. I'm sure there's a lot more little details the devs threw in that I left out, but I wanted to demonstrate just how much is here, and really the little details help to make this overall package as great as it is. However, some of these details did translate into a few negatives for me, and there are a couple of points that, while overall I can say I really enjoyed Mega Man Powered Up, there are a few things that I just did not like with this game. Now, like I said, when developing the game, you can tell the team really wanted to honor the original in almost all details. Unfortunately, that does mean there are certain elements from the game that are a bit negative here or are very nitpicky for me. These could be for developmental reasons, as they technically created two separate games here and wanted to keep the core gameplay relatively the same. Still, these are just a few of my holdups while playing the game. The first thing, and this is an issue with the original Mega Man game as well, but the little half-step Mega Man makes when moving forward. This has always thrown me off, and I understand it has its uses when setting yourself up for tough jumps, but tapping on the controller has always worked fine in the later games. And I think this was added here to keep the game faithful to the original, but also make it easier when recreating old school mode. But man though, like I said, even in the older Mega Man games, I don't like it, and I feel like it's caused me to lose a life more often than not, especially on smaller platforms, making the timing just all sorts of weird, and I just could never get it right. Another issue is that the floating platforms in certain levels have a semi-random pattern, and you can end up waiting for a bit of time until you get the jump you need in order to progress. This admittedly isn't as bad in new style mode, but is still a nightmare to contend with in old school style mode, especially when the platforms can shoot you. Another is that some of the jumps in the original Mega Man can be brutal, especially for new players, and almost all of them are here in new style. Stuff like the moving platforms in Gutsman stage or the teleporting platforms in Iceman stage. Back on the original NES, these jumps were always challenging, and they are the same here. Granted, there are ways now to supplement the difficulty, and Powered Up does go about giving the players more options here, like playing on easy mode, which does help you out by having boxes block some of the death pits and save you from falling, and you can also make use of Time Man's ability to slow things down in order to better tackle some of these jumps. However, I almost found Time Man's ability useless in a lot of these situations. For example, Gutsman stage, the amount of slowdown isn't long enough to traverse the long platform here. And if you use the time magic while on the platform, you're more likely than not just going to fall off. To be fair also, Iceman stage is reworked in new style mode to be a lot less frustrating. However, the original level is still an old school style, so be forewarned about that. Now, to be fair, a lot of my nitpicks and negative opinions thus far on the game mostly stem from design implementations that are carried over from the original game, and I could chalk these up to being a more subjective take and opinion. However, the biggest negative in the game, and something objectively I just think is really bad, appears right as you boot up the game, with the screen saying the game features an autosave feature, which is somewhat misleading because, while yes, Mega Man Powered Up does autosave records, challenge map completions, construction pack pickups and levels, and character unlocks, it does not save your progress in story mode for either new or old school style. This is frustrating, and luckily I found this out very early after loading the game up for the first time. I'm recording only the first level. I came back later to continue only to realize you need to manually save the game, which wouldn't be a problem, but the game doesn't tell you that in order to save your progress here, you have to manually do it every time. Powered Up also doesn't give you an option to save after levels unless you lose all your lives. Instead, you have to press the L shoulder button on the boss selection screen and scroll down to save your game every single time. So quite literally, they have the save feature buried in a sub menu. If it was on its own, I'd say that this was fine, as I'm an obsessive saver anyway, but the autosave screen at the beginning is confusing as it doesn't specify what's being saved. And I can imagine if you're not prepared for it, that could lead to a lot of initial frustration. I'll also admit a few times playing this that despite being an obsessive saver, I had forgotten to save my game, a few times leading to me needing to replay previously beaten stages. It's super frustrating, and honestly, it didn't need to be this way at all. So just be forewarned, you must save your game manually before quitting story mode at all. Again, I'd say most of these holdovers are nitpicks for me, and I don't think it hurts the overall game experience, especially if you're a veteran of the series. Plus, I don't think these would deter new players either. There are quite a few ways to supplement some of these issues by switching the game's difficulty, and people choosing old school style will more likely than not know what they're getting themselves into. I think a lot of people won't mind some of these nitpicks that I've had, but I wanted to mention them because they did stick out to me when playing through the game. Minus the save feature, which I think was a bad idea in general and should have either been reworked or given more options or just something, because it can be very frustrating to make progress on a tough set of stages only to realize you gotta do it all over again.
Ready?
Reporting for duty. Fire. Ha. Fire.
So is having multiple characters playable and being able to take all of them through story mode with multiple difficulties enough? No? Well, lucky there is a challenge section with 100 challenge missions that you can play with all of the additional playable robots. Each of the master robots has a set of 10 challenges that equal the 100 challenge missions total. There is just so much love put into this game, and I just love the fact that there is a lot to do in the game and it doesn't feel like busy work. Some of the challenges can be brutal, but I found them fun and engaging overall. Unfortunately, you will need to unlock the characters before you play them in challenge mode. Still, challenge mode is a nice break from the main game. The game really goes out of its way and the extra mile in terms of challenges and just stuff to do in general. The game tracks which bosses you've cleared on what difficulty modes, and even tracks if you were able to defeat a level without taking damage on each individual difficulty. Not to mention the scoring system is designed a lot better this go around in comparison to the NES original. Sure, you could collect different scores, but RNG would essentially dictate what you would get when you defeat a boss on the NES game. Now the extra points are tied to damage you take and how fast you can clear a level. So if you're competitive and want to aim for a legit high score, it is absolutely possible now in a more straightforward way. I can't stress enough the development team really emphasized replayability here, giving you so much more content to play around with, ways to play the game, challenges, and modes that I'm shocked this game doesn't get brought up nearly half as much as many of the other mainline games. The game not only wants you to replay it, but it gives you so many reasons to quote-unquote just do one more run, that on sheer fun replayability alone, it should receive high marks. You really do get the bang for your buck, so to speak, here in Mega Man Powered Up, because the replayability and amount of stuff to accomplish in the game is just insane, which I think can be a good thing for those wanting a meatier experience to get into. In order to get a 100% on your save file for New Style, you'll need to replay the game with each unlockable character, including the super secret ones. In total, you'll have to complete 36 levels with each character. That's every character, every difficulty, and every stage in order to complete New Style 100%, which is daunting on its own, if I'm honest. Just to give you an idea, here's the percentage of completion after only going through normal mode with Mega Man and saving all 8 of the master robots. You'll see I'm sitting at 2.7% total percentage of completion. So you can see that this game is bulky, even just looking at New Style alone, if you're looking to complete everything. To be honest though, I think it's well worth it. And if you do enjoy this game, you'll have no shortage of things to do for a very long time. It's pretty cool too, because you're not held back if you just want a casual experience either, as you'll still get a satisfying feeling if you decide to put it down, but it does reward those who presses on, which I think is absolutely sweet.
Warning!
Those eyes, they're so mesmerizing. Even more than 1,000,000 volts of electricity.
Oh, thank goodness! You're still good old Elecman, right?
Now it's your turn to be mesmerized. Time to turn the voltage up to the highest setting. Energize!
There are no multiplayer modes in Mega Man Powered Up, however the game featured a lot of things tailored to online. There was quote-unquote DLC, which was how you would get Roll with her multiple variations via different costumes. Proto Man was also available as DLC, however you can unlock him in-game. Now technically these are not DLCs as they were unlockables in the game. However, in order to access Roll and her multiple outfits, you would have needed to utilize the PSP's online feature to go onto a website to access her, which is inaccessible nowadays. However, there is a workaround as you can go onto GameFAQs nowadays and just download a save file with Roll and her costumes unlocked. And there is also saves which unlock these bonus characters without anything completed, so you can still play through the game as normal once you get the save. Slight tangent, but it does make me pretty nostalgic seeing DLC and the variations of it before it became a staple in modern video games, for better or for worse. Mostly worse. Arguably though, the best mode here is going to be the construction mode, which allows you to create your own stages utilizing packs you pick up in-game. There are various templates you can unlock, and these in-game packs will have different customization options. The way construction mode works is that each level is sectioned off into multiple squares that are 8x14 blocks. You create levels by placing platforms, enemies, and terrain down. In terms of platforms like ladder, ground, and spikes as an example, you can put as many down in the 8x14 section as is available. However, enemies' health and destructibles all take energy, which you can see down on the bottom left via the energy indicators. You're only allotted this amount of energy to place these items in these sections. Each item placed will also show how much energy will be taken if you place one of these items here. You are still able to build more in the other 8x14 sections, as each have their own energy allotted. By connecting all the other 8x14 size rooms, the player will move from screen to screen, ultimately creating the level. You are able to choose selectable characters for this area and the boss at the end, so you can mix and match whatever your heart desires when it comes to playable characters and bosses. I do have two minor gripes with this mode. First, I'm not a fan of limiting the player here on how much they can or cannot place in an area. I think it does stifle creativity a bit and does hold this mode back, but I can at least appreciate that they wanted to balance out each section. The other being limiting resources behind packs. I get that it makes the player want to hunt for additional parts, but again, limiting certain parts and features to other packs stifles the creative element a bit. Both of these could boil down to hardware issues and limitations, as I can see launching a stable version of the construction mode would be a higher priority without needing to place 100 enemies in one 8x14 section of the game and have it run absolutely horribly. Still, these would be my only nitpick of this mode, as there is still a lot a person can do here and really develop some cool stages, because there is still a lot of options available to choose and utilize when creating. I think the best comparison to the construction mode would be Mario Maker, which came out about 9 years later. It's actually kind of scary how similar to Mario Maker this mode is, and while I definitely feel like the devs of that game played Power-Up's construction mode, there are some limitations here that hold the mode back just a bit, as I mentioned previously, in comparison to Mario Maker. Granted, I think it's going to really come down to what style of game you prefer and what you're there for. Powered Up allows you to create levels in the style of Mega Man, where the structure of a Mega Man game is intact, whereas with Mario Maker you can create some amazingly horrific levels, all in the same game, and it's not limited to one specific Mario game in the franchise. Still, I'd be remiss not to notice the glaring similarities between the game and this mode, but both are great in their own right depending on what you're looking for. Powered Up does have the whole pack and health system when designing a level, whereas Mario Maker just kinda lets you do what you want. Both have strengths and weaknesses, but neither are the wrong choice, and their individual structures are what differs. If you are fans of either franchise, both offer interesting experiences overall. Just know that the few drawbacks / differences if you're coming from Mario Maker to construction mode. I will say you should avoid this mode until you have either played a significant chunk of the game or downloaded a save with everything unlocked, as from the get-go construction mode is very bare bones and you'll want to have more things unlocked. That way you have a lot more to play around with when creating levels. As of now, I don't think there is a community of people who will create and upload their levels, and I'm not sure if they even still could do that, but it would be awesome to see what people could come up with now. So if you are part of some sort of community, let me know in the comments, as I'd love to see what people have come up with over time and maybe showcase them in a future video. On Metacritic, Mega Man Powered Up is sitting at an 82 for critics and an 8.9 for user score. I tend to agree with the 8.9 user score, so I'm rounding up and I'm giving it a 9. And as of right now, it's one of the best PSP games I've played on the channel and one you absolutely need to pick up. I don't think it's perfect, and again, my own subjective opinions aside, there is so much to like here, it's hard not to give this one high marks. If you're looking to own this physically, it is a bit on the pricier side, especially if you want to own it in box, but if you can get it for a decent price, it's absolutely recommended for any PSP collection. Coming back to this game years later, I actually ended up liking this even more than when I initially played it. This is one of those occasions where, in my opinion, the remake not only exceeds the original, but to me, and this might be sacrilege to some, I think it should be the standard bearer if you're going to play Mega Man 1 today. It kind of reminds me of the various East games remade today, where you can still appreciate what they were going for, but in a lot of ways your taste is going to vary on which one you prefer in terms of the original or the remakes. I know a lot of people really love that original NES Mega Man, but to me it doesn't hold a candle to this remake. But what do you think? Did you enjoy Powered Up or do you prefer the original? Let me know in the comments below and make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, thank you all for stopping by.